Greetings, this is Paul, your Pacific Northwest trail guide. I want to help you pick your next trail to explore, so let's check this one out. In and out hikes are okay, but there's something special about a loop hike. It just feels a little more adventurous, going in and coming back to where you started a different way, while never retracing a step, and every view a fresh one. The Tumalo Falls loop hike is a very rewarding, average-length day hike you can do in the high desert of Central Oregon. You'll travel a total of 7 miles and climb about 1,300 feet. You'll start out at about 5,000 feet elevation at the trailhead, so this can be a good hike to escape the heat of the valley for a bit on a hot summer day. To get to the trailhead for this hike, just head west out of the old town part of Bend on the Skyliners Road. After about 9 miles, shortly after the historic Skyliners neighborhood, the road veers right and turns into Tumalo Falls Road. Then it's a gravel road for a couple miles till you dead end right at the trailhead. Check the video description for exact coordinates of the trailhead location if you want to plug them into your favorite Maps app to get directions. Let's go over just a few things you might want to consider bringing for this hike in addition to whatever you normally gear up with. First, you might want to bring trekking poles and or water shoes. There is a creek crossing on this trail that can have significant flow that you'll see later in the video. Whether you like to use poles to help you balance in these crossings or just have some water sandals to make the fording easier, they might come in handy. Second, while this hike is not totally exposed, it is the kind of sparse forest typical of east of the Cascades. So on a clear day, you are probably exposed half of the time. A sun hat might come in handy. The last thing I'll give you a heads up on is you'll want to have a Northwest Forest Pass to park at this trailhead, or you can just pick up a single-day recreation pass from the Forest Service for $5. So, you made it to the trailhead, now what? Well, you can jump right into the hike, but right at the trailhead you'll find a great viewpoint for the main Tumalo Falls, as well as a trail you can take down to Tumalo Creek and follow up to the bottom of Tumalo Falls if you want to do a little exploring first. When you're ready to get going, head off to the left of the interpretive signs up the North Fork Trail. You'll soon approach a fork in the trail you can take to the right to get that view from the top of the falls. The trail branches off in various places in this area, but it all joins together again if you just keep going forward uphill. This first section of the trail takes you to an upper viewpoint of Tumalo Falls, then continues up along Tumalo Creek. The first short section to the upper viewpoint is actually the steepest part of this trail, but the trail itself is flat gravel. Once you continue past that upper viewpoint, it is a gentle, gradual ascent for this section, but the trail becomes a more typical rugged, rocky, and rooty kind. As you follow this meandering path along Tumalo Creek, you'll be greeted by waterfall after waterfall. The main Tumalo Falls at the trailhead may be the biggest, but all of these smaller gems add up to something more. And they just keep coming. After a couple miles, you'll reach a log bridge going over a creek. I stopped here for a snack and picked up a bunch of mosquito bites. I don't recommend it. You'll cross the bridge and meander slowly uphill for another mile, passing more waterfalls, which will now be on your left. After that mile, you'll come to your first junction with the Swampy Lakes Trail, where we'll be making a sharp left turn, ending Section A of this loop. The next section of this loop continues uphill for a little bit, but soon transitions to a steady downhill which will continue the rest of the way. After less than half a mile, you will approach that big creek crossing I mentioned though. The main crossing is a huge log which you can try balancing across, but it may have water flowing around and over it. If you don't feel like trying that, you can also go downstream a bit where the water is not pooling behind logs and try wading through it, maybe with some added support from trekking poles. Soon after that crossing, you'll find yourself gliding downhill on a more overgrown and exposed trail than before, with younger trees crowding the trail. In less than a few miles, the trail will be leveling out and you'll approach the next section of the loop, starting at a junction with the Bridge Creek Trail. The last section of the loop is a fairly flat trail following along Bridge Creek to connect you back to the North Fork Trail just up from the trailhead. Keep a lookout on your right for nice views of Bridge Creek and maybe another small waterfall or two in the distance. You'll come up on a small building on your right towards the end. Veer off to the right, returning to where you started. As we time-lapse through the last mile of this loop, you can see it's a pretty chill, level dirt path you'll wrap up on. It might be a good time to reflect on the vast area you just traversed. I always find it interesting to think about my perception of time on a hike by thinking back to a point earlier on that trail and how after so many small steps and moments have accumulated, you find yourself near the end of a trek that seemed so distant before. Okay, let's go over the ratings for this trail. First, let's talk about the terrain. This entire trail loop is in pretty good shape, but there is a creek crossing to contend with, so we'll give it 3 rocks out of 5 for terrain. If it didn't have the crossing, I'd give it 1. In terms of the elements, you're dealing with some exposure, and with the high elevation, you need to consider when is a good time to go. So we'll go with 3 clouds out of 5 for elements. You're putting on at least 7 miles for this loop, maybe more depending on any extra exploring you do. That is pretty middle of the road for a day hike, so we'll give it 3 boots. And finally, let's rate the climb. There isn't a lot of steepness to this hike, but you do cover a decent bit of elevation gradually. We'll round up and call it 3 mountains out of 5. Well, that's it for this edition of Pacific Northwest Trail Guide. I hope I have or will soon help you pick your next trail to explore. I scouted this trail in June of 2021, but trails are always evolving. If you pick this trail and encounter any new features or changes people might like to know about, please help out your fellow explorers by sharing in the comments on this video. This video shows some of the beautiful sights of this trail in what feeble capacity it can render. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but an experience with all of your senses cannot even be conveyed in pictures or video. So don't take my word for it. Get out there and see it for yourself.